Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi again. Let's continue learning about the stabilization policy in an economy. As for fiscal policy, government set the level of government spending and net taxation. Remember the aggregate demand equations. Y is expressed as C plus I plus G plus NX. So reducing tax will increase consumption, and higher consumption means higher consumptions means higher aggregate demand. Higher government spending also increases the aggregate demand. So since the change in tax and government spending affect aggregate demand at any given price, fiscal policy would shift the ID curve. Y will be higher or lower at any given price as a consequence. What we have to know as well is that when G increases or tax decreases, for instance, yes, aggregate demand or Y increases, but it doesn't stop here. Since consumption is affected by Y, higher Y will cause higher C2. Higher C will increase Y. Higher Y will increase again C, C to Y again, and so on and so forth. This additional impact to Y from consumption is called the multiplier effect. It shifts the eddy curve further to the right. So if G, for example, increases by 5 billion, Y will increase more than 5 billion for sure. As can be seen from here, this is the initial impact when G increases. Y increases from Y1 to Y2. And this is the multiplier effect. Y increases from Y2 to Y3. How to calculate the full effect? Let's write the eddy equation more completely. Suppose C function is linear. C equals to A plus marginal propensity to consume, or MPC, times Y minus T, or disposable income. MPC is delta C over delta Y, or the impact of Y to C. So we have Y equals this, A plus MPC, Y minus T plus I plus G plus NX, and with simplification we got this. And look, the final result is here. Y is expressed solely on the left side of the equation, and Y is here, A minus MPC T plus I plus G plus NX per 1 minus MPC. And then we can find the impact of change in G to Y, which is delta Y over delta G. It is equal to 1 per 1 minus MPC. This is what we call as government spending multiplier. And we can also find the impact of change in T to Y from the equation, which is delta Y over delta T equals to minus MPC per 1 minus MPC. Just like before, this is now what we call as tax multiplier. So if MPC, for example, is 80%, the multiplier is 1 per 1 minus 80%, or equal to 5. Meaning what? Meaning that any increase in G will result in an increase in Y 5 times the increase of G. With MPC is again equal to 80%, we can also find the tax multiplier is minus 80% per 1 minus 80% equals to minus 4. So we can see if G, for instance, increases by 10 billion, Y will increase 5 times bigger, which is 50 billions. When T, for instance, increases by 10 billion, what's going to happen to Y? Y will decrease by 4 times 10, or equals to 40 billion. Lastly, before we're talking about the policy effectiveness, we see the interaction between money market and real market again. The increase in G or the decrease in T in our previous discussion has resulted in increase in Y. It further increases the Y because of the multiplier effect. However, it again doesn't stop here. Suppose from the previous process, increase in G or decrease in T plus the multiplier effect has caused AD curve shift to the right, and at P bar, increase Y from Y1 to Y2. When Y increases, it impacts the money market actually. With more income, money demand will be higher, and money demand curve as a consequence shifts to the right from MD to MD prime, leading to a higher equilibrium level of interest rate at point B. And then returning to the eddy curve, AD will then shift to the left because higher interest rate will reduce I, then the AD, and eventually the Y. So Y decreases from Y2 to Y3, and the process is what we call as the crowding out effect. So the total effect of the expansionary fiscal policy, despite the crowding out effect, here as we can see, has increased Y as well as interest rate. Okay, as you can read from the textbook, the stabilization policy using fiscal and or monetary policy can be active, can be against the use of any policy, or can be relying to the so-called economic stabilizer. We'll be talking in more detail about this in chapter 36, so I will just explain it briefly now. Active stabilization policy is needed to cure the economic from recession. Fiscal policy in particular could even give impact to the long-run economic growth. Tax cut or tax credit, for instance, not only increases the aggregate demand in the short run, it may also affect the aggregate supply in the long run because with higher disposable income and lower cost of doing investment, economy could purchase more capital. Economists who are against the active stabilization policy argue that both fiscal and monetary policy always works with lags. Monetary policy is usually responded with a long lag because many firms make investment plans far in advance, while the impacts may last for several years. Therefore, monetary policy ends up being a cost of rather than a cure of short-run economic fluctuation. Lag in fiscal policy, on the other hand, is largely attributable to the political process because the policy usually needs approval from the legislative. Lastly, automatic stabilizer means that no deliberate actions taken by the policymakers to stabilize the economy. When there is a recession, for instance, tax will be lower because almost all taxes are closely tied to economic activity. Lower tax may shift the AD to the right. The same is true with the government spending. With recession, there will be more unemployment. The then unemployed person will apply more for unemployment insurance benefit, welfare benefits, and other forms of income support, which surely increase government spending, thus shifting the eddy to the right automatically. Okay, that's all from me now. Hope you understand the works of the common stabilization policies in an economy. So see you in the next presentation and the different topic of basic macroeconomics. Thank you for the attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.